There's a kind of quiet magic in the way scrap wood, those leftover offcuts, abandoned planks and imperfect slivers, can be reborn into something so striking, so bold, and yet so warm, that it redefines what we think modern wall art can be. It's not about perfection. It's about precision meeting imperfection halfway. It's about taking what others might toss aside and turning it into a focal point, a conversation starter, a silent sculpture that lives on your wall and whispers its presence with every glance. Modern wall art made from scrap wood isn't just a craft, it's a statement. It's the art of contrast. Rough grain meets sharp geometry, reclaimed texture meets polished minimalism, the natural meets the designed. And it always begins with the pile, the heap of wood that builds up in corners of garages and sheds, from past projects, torn-out walls, furniture upgrades, and salvaged materials that carry with them history, potential, and hidden beauty. Different lengths, different widths, different grains, species, shades. No two pieces the same, and that's where the magic lives. Picture yourself running your hands through the pile. Each piece of wood has a character. One is deeply grooved and aged to a gray-silver by sun and time. Another still holds a bit of old green paint, chipped but hanging on. A third is golden and smooth with tight grain lines that look like topographical maps. You begin to sort not by size or type but by feel. Some call to be background pieces. Others are meant to stand out. You're not just building art. You're composing a rhythm, a beat, a structure that will live on your wall and never sit still. The beauty of modern design is its embrace of clean lines, bold edges, and deliberate asymmetry. When paired with the raw, unpredictable character of scrap wood, the result becomes something truly powerful. It could be as simple as a grid, rectangular offcuts mounted in an orderly matrix, tightly spaced, each one stained or painted in a complementary shade. Warm walnut sits beside pale maple, beside painted pine, beside a piece scorched with fire for a touch of blackened contrast. It's uniform and wild all at once. Or maybe it's more organic. You take long, angled cuts and fit them together like a fractured puzzle, letting the grain lines guide the direction. Every intersection becomes a point of tension and balance. You might paint one piece matte black, leave another raw, stain a third in a rich mahogany, and then interlock them into a single triangular formation that radiates movement across the wall. It feels modern not because it's sterile but because it's precise, measured, intentional. Some artists choose to go dimensional, creating wall sculptures that step off the surface. Each block, each plank, each panel is mounted at a different depth, casting shadows that shift with the light. You might build a mountain range of scrap wood triangles, each one cut at a slightly different pitch, layered over one another, rising and falling across a wide backing board. Or maybe you glue cubes, cutoffs from 2x4s, side by side, rotating each so the grain faces a different way. Stain some, burn others, leave a few pale and untouched. Suddenly your flat wall becomes textured, sculptural, alive. The arrangement is where the mind becomes the chisel. You start to see patterns in the chaos. You might group darker tones in one corner, let them fade into lighter tones across the piece. Or build concentric circles, radiating outward like the rings of a tree or ripples in water. A slab of plywood becomes your canvas. The scraps become brushstrokes. Wood glue becomes your medium and time becomes your rhythm. You can lean into geometry, hexagons, chevrons, herringbone patterns, all cut from offcuts and mounted with extreme care, creating a hypnotic modern mosaic that feels engineered yet deeply human. Or you can go brutalist, sharp, raw-edged blocks stacked and layered with an industrial feel, like wooden bricks rising into a jagged skyline. Paint can play a role, but it's used with restraint. You might mask off clean diagonal lines with tape, then paint certain areas in bold black, stark white, or deep navy blue. Or maybe you go with dusty earth tones, burnt sienna, charcoal gray, rusted copper, to create a palette that feels grounded and modern all at once. Leave other areas bare. Let the knots and grain show through. Let one old nail hole become part of the story. One of the most compelling aspects of scrap wood art is how deeply personal it becomes. These aren't materials bought fresh from a lumberyard, they're fragments of other stories. A piece of cedar from an old fence. A strip of oak from a broken chair. A sliver of pine left over from a bookshelf you made 5 years ago. They hold memory. They carry weight. And when they come together in the frame of a new piece, they build something that feels like it has always existed, even though it was just born from your hands. Modern scrap wood art doesn't require a professional workshop. All you need is a saw, some clamps, glue, a bit of sandpaper, and patience. You can work in layers. Cut pieces and arrange them on a table before committing. Try different patterns. Walk away. Come back. See them with new eyes. This is not rushed work, it's careful, meditative, slow. Sometimes the simplest idea becomes the most powerful. A single wooden panel, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, divided into quarters. Each quadrant holds a different arrangement. Vertical stripes in one, horizontal lines in another, diagonal chevrons in the third, a chaotic mosaic in the last. 4 moods, 4 moments, all built from scraps. And when you step back, you don't just see a decorative object. You see a dialogue between order and disorder, between chaos and craft. And then there are pieces that go even further, integrating metal, concrete, or even glass. A steel bar bisecting a wooden slab. A concrete panel inset among maple strips. Small glass discs embedded into scorched wood. It's no longer just wall art, it becomes design, architecture, sculpture. And it all began with scraps, with leftovers, with what others might have called trash. Once completed, the presentation matters. Some prefer a floating frame, sleek, black, minimal. Others choose to mount the art directly to the wall, no frame at all, letting the raw edges remain visible. Or maybe it hangs from leather straps, giving a soft contrast to the wood's angles. However it's displayed, it becomes part of the space. It doesn't hang quietly, it lives on the wall. Pulls you in. It invites touch. It tells you without saying a word that beauty doesn't need to be flawless, just needs to be true. In a world filled with mass-produced decor and factory-made sameness, modern wall art built from scrap would offer something else, something that feels earned. It carries authenticity. It breathes with its own rhythm. It balances rawness with structure, age with freshness, grit with elegance. It reminds us that design doesn't need to be polished to be modern. It needs to be intentional, honest, built by hand. And that's the quiet power of scrap wood art. It doesn't ask for attention. It earns it, not by being loud but by being layered, rich, thoughtful. By being a reminder that even the most ordinary materials, when shaped with patience and care, can become something extraordinary, something lasting, something that holds a piece of who you are and places it, forever, on the wall. It starts with the scrap pile, not the centerpiece, not the main project, just the pieces left over. The ends too short to use, the strips that bowed, the odd cuts that didn't fit. At a glance it looks like waste, but look closer and it's potential, hidden in plain sight. Because when you take those scraps out of the pile and line them up, not for structure, not for storage, but for composition, they start to feel different. They're no longer leftovers. They're lines, plants, texture, possibility. Modern wall art doesn't need to be complex to be powerful. In fact, the power often comes from what's left out. Clean space, strong geometry, quiet contrast. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it, slowly, subtly. And with scrap wood, you already have the most honest material in the shop. It's already been cut, already been shaped, already lived through some other plan. Now it gets to become something new, without pretending to be anything else. The first decision is orientation. Horizontal strips suggest calm, order, structure. Vertical slats bring height, a sense of reach. Diagonals cut tension. Triangles add direction. And just 1 or 2 curves, if placed precisely, can break the entire grid in a way that feels intentional, not chaotic. That's the tightrope you walk with clean modern design. Every shape has weight. Every space you leave is just as important as what you fill. Some of the most striking pieces use only 2 or 3 kinds of wood. Nothing rare. Nothing exotic. Just the right contrast. Maybe a warm strip of cherry against cool ash, or a blackened oak inset against pale birch. The materials don't compete, they interact. They line up, interrupt each other, create rhythm without repetition. And the joinery doesn't have to be complicated. Most of the time it's glue and clamp. But the precision? That has to be there. The spacing, the edges, the proportions. You can't fake those. You might spend longer arranging the layout than building it. And that's not wasted time.